We all have wants and desires, something we wish for deep in our hearts. Maybe it's fame, fortune, happiness, peace, love. Tragically, what we want and what we get are rarely the same thing. And despite our wishes, we're constantly beset with obscurity, poverty, depression, war, hate. This contradiction is explored in the action survival horror Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl. But to properly analyze this contrarian desire, we need to look at the precursors to this story as well. The Tarkovsky film Stalker, and the novel Roadside Picnic. The novel is a Soviet-era piece of science fiction written by the Strugatsky brothers. Everything that has to do with Stalker in the modern sense is spawned from this short story. Not just the film and the numerous Stalker games, but many Stalker-likes that have come after. The thematic through-line that cuts through them is this driving force we call desire.
I want to be rich.
And it's explored primarily through humanity's relationship with something called the Zone. These zones are highly corrupted, incredibly lethal swaths of land where entry into them is violently restricted, typically by a military or other occupying force. But people find their way into them anyway, mostly to plunder whatever's inside, typically immensely valuable technologies, treasures, and artifacts. Though there are those who venture in for knowledge.
Hello? Hello?
Or simply for the sheer excitement of exploration of the unknown. Of course, there are those who want to control it, or destroy it.
What are you, deaf? What are you here?
All of these people are referred to as stalkers, a word which has seeped into and pervaded through pop culture for decades at this point. And it's their desires that we'll be taking a good long look at. Starting with the novel, the main character Red is a stalker who's torn between his desire to go into the zone and also stay far away from it. In the beginning of the book, Red attempts to cheer up and revitalize a scientist friend by offering to acquire him an artifact that could propel his research. And although they venture out and grab said artifact with great difficulty, it ultimately ends in the scientist dying from exposure to the zone, just hours after reaching safety. Red immediately feels heavy amounts of guilt for causing this tragedy, and vows to never go back in. Of course, he doesn't hold to this vow. His desire to go into the zone is simply far deeper. This is in part because he wishes for a better life for his family, specifically his mutated daughter. But it goes beyond the pay. Something about the zone calls to him. He's had every opportunity to live a more honest but simpler life, but he rejects them all. Fact is, he finds it more enjoyable to venture into the zone illegally. These themes are reflected in the film Stalker, which was also written by the Strugatsky brothers.
Давайте вы, профессор.
In it, an unnamed stalker leads a professor and a writer deep into the zone to take them to a room where any wish can be granted.
Вы писатель?
Along the way, the three reveal their reasons for going into the zone, beyond the simple act of having their desires come to life. The writer confesses at first that he seeks inspiration.
Вдохновение, профессор. Утеряно вдохновение. Иду выпрашивать.
But in truth, he's seeking a deeper meaning, a deeper purpose to his life.
Вранье все это. Плевал я на вдохновение.
The professor never explicitly opens up on his desires, leading the writer to believe he's there for scientific accolades, that he can be lauded by his peers.
Ну, натурально. Все разевают рты и хором кричат. Нобелевскую ему!
Truth is that the professor is there to destroy the room, which he views as a potential source for the world's worst problems.
Но пока эта язва здесь открыта для всякой сволочи, ни сна, ни покоя.
The stalker says he doesn't have any wishes besides the desire to bring others to the room so that they may find some measure of happiness in their miserable lives.
А я могу, понимаете, я могу им помочь. Никто им помочь не может, а я гнида могу. Я от счастья плакать готов, что могу им помочь. Вот и все. Ничего не хочу больше.
But this is also somewhat untrue. He desires to find someone who still believes in happiness.
Никто не верит. Не только эти двое. Никто. Кого же мне водить туда?
All three are highly motivated by what they want, more than enough to brave all manner of dangers, not just the physical and immediate such as the military or deadly anomalies, but also the mutilation of the desires that drive them into the zone in the first place.
Ведь я думал, переделать их, а переделали-то меня.
по своему образу и подобию.
The game steps away from this a bit.
Bullshit. You're lying.
Since it's an action game, discussing lofty philosophical ideas is a bit out of step with the atmosphere, so instead, the game uses the trope of the amnesiac badass to be the driving force behind the player's progression throughout the story. He has nothing except a wiped memory, an enigmatic kill order, and a mysterious tattoo. Finding out who he is and what his true purpose could be is the primary motivating desire for the player character. Of course, it's eventually revealed that the player, Strelok, is someone who has been asking too many questions of the zone's true nature, even going so far as to reach its core multiple times. And those who control the zone have wiped his mind in order to protect their own ambitions, their own desires.
Hello, Strelok. I see you have many questions for me. Well, ask them, and then we can decide what to do with you.
All three stories employ this idea that human desires have a duality to them, that some are held close to the heart and deeply hidden, some are detrimental to being human in the first place, and a few are best left undiscovered. There are numerous subplots of the stories that help reinforce this idea of the duality of desire, the highly contradictory nature of it, and it spans multiple narrative levels. In Roadside Picnic, Red lusts after a fellow stalker's daughter, despite him being married and with a child. It's a lust that he pursues until it's realized, of course, multiple times. And yet he confesses that each time he gives in, he's left wanting. He finds that the act is far less than satisfying, and that the promise of it is much more enticing. Similarly, in the film, the stalker's wife expresses her desire to simply have her husband be at home. She wants him to be a husband, take care of her and their daughter. It isn't just the threat of him simply never coming back from some fatal encounter, but even just getting caught would land him back in jail.
Ну хорошо, о себе ты не хочешь думать, а мы? Ты о ребенке своем подумай. Она же к тебе еще и привыкнуть не успела. А ты опять за старое.
In contrast, he sees the zone as his true home, a place where he actually belongs.
Ну вот, мы дома.
This is visually reinforced by the warm sepia tones, particularly when the stalker is in the city with his family, while the zone itself is vibrant with life and color, implying that this place is where he feels the most true. Even more telling is that the stalker ultimately confesses to his wife that his trips into the zone are all to find someone with true unflinching faith. Not exactly in a god, though that's inferred multiple times.
Они же не верят ни во что. У них же орган этот, которым верят, атрофировался.
Успокойся.
За ненадобностью.
But as previously mentioned, in happiness, because he himself wants to believe that happiness exists, that someone out there possesses it.
Зачем они сюда шли? Чего они хотели?
Скорее всего, счастье. Никто не верит. Не только эти двое. Никто.
The irony is that in front of him is his wife, who has unflinching faith in him. That despite his absence bringing her pain and suffering, his presence gives her warmth and happiness.
Ну, только уж лучше горькое счастье, чем серая унылая жизнь.
The faith that he's been looking for has been in front of him this entire time. In the game, this contradictory nature of desire is explored through missions and factions. Particularly, duty and freedom are two factions that are constantly at each other's throats. Considering that duty represents authority and freedom represents anarchy, it's pretty much a given that they constantly and violently collide. Their very ideologies practically demand it. For example, duty sees the zone as a cancer, and they want to destroy everything in it, while freedom sees the zone as a kind of a blessing, believing that it should be open to study by anyone. What exemplifies this desire is the wish granter itself, something that happens in all three stories.
What you want is here, Stalker. Come.
In Roadside Picnic, it's referred to as the Golden Sphere. Although he's certainly tempted by the literal riches he's going to get, Red takes this trip to the wish granter because he wants to make life better for his increasingly bestial daughter. However, in order to actually get to the wish granter, he has to send someone in first to be brutally killed by the meat grinder anomaly that's guarding the wish granter. So he ends up sacrificing a cheery, bright-eyed, optimistic kid whose wish would have been something like world peace. Traumatized by his own actions, and by all of the harsh challenges he has encountered all his life, Red becomes unable to actually make a wish. He finds too much wrong in the world to decide on any given desire, and as a result offloads the decision to the sphere, hoping that the trials he has faced has shaped him into a good person. And so the sphere grants him a wish, though nothing about the world is changed. The only thing that happens is that Red becomes a more altruistic, positive person, much like the person who he sacrificed in the first place. In the film, we're presented with the room, which upon entering it grants people their deepest desire. The Stalker tells of his mentor Porcupine, who had become filthy rich after entering the room, but also that he had to sacrifice his brother in order to get to it. And despite Porcupine's eventual suicide, he still believes that the room will provide happiness in a world mired in misery. It's later that the writer susses out that the room does not, in fact, provide happiness, rather that it reflects what's truly inside. He posits that Porcupine's suicide is because he was shown what kind of person he really was, and he just couldn't bear the reality.
Здесь то сбудется, что натуре твоей соответствует сути, о которой ты понятия не имеешь, и она в тебе сидит и всю жизнь тобой управляет. Ничего ты, кожаный чулок, не понял. Дикобраза не алчность одолела. Да он по этой луже на коленях ползал, брата вымаливал. А получил кучу денег. И ничего иного получить не мог. Потому что дикобразу дикобразово. А совесть, душевные муки, это все придумано от головы. Понял он все это и повесился.
The game turns the wish granter on its head, making it a kind of lure. It doesn't actually grant wishes, and anyone who uses it is typically beset with a terrible fate. The actual purpose of the wish granter is for the wisher to be turned into a puppet by the people who created the thing in the first place, to help protect them from outside interference, because it's their desire to bring about world peace through collective global mind control. Instead, what they receive is the zone, a blight on the surface of the earth that grows larger every time a stalker finds and uses the wish granter. These people are caught in the vicious cycle of attempting to realize world peace, but are destroying it in the process. On realizing who they are, Strelok destroys them. Not that he had set out to do that in the first place. He has been driven to find the absolute truth of the zone. And having found it, he can finally have peace. Because perhaps inner peace is all he truly wanted in the first place. Hope everyone enjoyed this essay. Please sub for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.